Awesome. So, welcome to Norse Mythology and Rune Casting class. It is so nice to meet all of you. I am Alexandra. I run the Divination Academy, and I am the owner of the Divination Academy. I have been studying using runes for divination work for about 23 years. And I have also been studying paganism, spell work in general, as well as different forms of Norse mythology and mythology from all over the world for about 22 to 23 years. Yes, I have been studying since I was born, really, but it's since I could study. I was born into a pagan family. My family are all polytheistic pagans from the Middle East, and I'm a first generation Middle Eastern woman. My family comes from Syria and Lebanon. And I am so excited to be teaching you all today. So welcome to class. So it looks like we have mostly new students and students who have not seen the previous two classes, which is completely fine. Just know that on the YouTube channel, you can go back and watch the two previous classes, just in case some of this information seems a little bit too advanced. For anybody who has already been studying Norse mythology and runes, this definitely won't feel too advanced. These are definitely introduction classes, and we have not gotten to the advanced classes yet. So the website that I sent to all of you in the chat is what we are looking at right now at the moment. So if you would like to follow that link that I sent you all to the website, it is just www.divinationacademy.com. Feel free to follow along with the information that we are going over today. The first thing that we are going to talk about when it comes to runes and rune work. Oh, before we start that, I want to let all of you know that one of the main books being used for this class is called the Runes Workbook by Leon D. Wild. If you go to the website, this is the cited source. We also have quite a few other cited sources for this class, but this is one of the main books that we do use for this class. It's one of my favorites. The reason that it's one of my favorites is because it gives you tons and tons of discussion questions and activities to do to help you memorize how to use runes, and also goes over the basic history of Norse mythology. And in my study of runes, I have found that it is hard to find like very non-biased, factual, historical, and anthropological information about Norse practices and Norse people. They usually are separated. If you want anthropological information, it's usually one style of book. If you want magical information, it's usually a different style of book. Whereas this book really does a great job of incorporating both. So I really do enjoy that. So once again, it is the Runes Workbook by Leon D. Wild. Anyway, so the first thing that we are going to go over are the elements within rune casting. This class focuses mostly on using runes for divination work, as well as focusing on the pagan spirituality that ancient Norse people followed. And a lot of the elemental work that was used when runes started to be used for divination purposes is based in Middle Eastern theology, specifically Iranian elemental theology. And so here we have very basic, very introduction definitions of the elements within rune work. The reason that we are going over the elements is because every single rune is connected to an element. So depending on which rune we discuss, every single one will have its own element that rules over that rune. And so if you would like to, you can read over the definitions of the elements, and I will give you a minute to do that. If you are looking at a phone, I know that it can be kind of small. So I will give you kind of the keywords for each one, but I feel like it's a little bit boring if I just sit here and read off the screen. But so Earth is a symbol of stability and healing and grounding. It is every single thing that we can touch and feel. It is associated a lot with wealth. And of course, wealth and prosperity meant very, very different things in ancient Norse cultures than wealth and prosperity mean today. So it is also a symbol of, like I said, anything that you can touch. So that being your home, your car, your money, anything that you can really buy with money. It is your plants, your crops. It is also associated a lot with death and rebirth. That also kind of gets in with fire as well. So it's kind of the actual physical process of death is very earth. The actual physical process of life, such as living and breathing plants and animals and humans, is very earth, whereas kind of the life force within those things is fire. Air is the symbol of freedom. It is the unknown. It is air, the symbol of cleansing. It is also a symbol of thought. It is everything that is theoretical. So where
do you mind muting everybody again? I think there's been some new people that come in and they're not muted.
Of course. Yes.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay. So air is, yes, whereas earth is reality. It is everything that you can touch and feel. Air is the theoretical. It is everything that you can think about. It is your mental health. It is everything going through your mind. It is your train of thought. It is your being able to think about something in a very logical and analytical way. It is everything that you can think about, everything that is theoretical. Fire. I love fire. Fire is one of my favorite elements. It is one of my favorite sigils to work with, and some of my favorite runes are all fire. But fire is passion. It is destruction. It is, now remember that earth is everything we can touch. So fire is not going to be destruction tools. So it is not tools of destruction or tools of passion. It is the theoretical view of passion, the idea of destruction. It is rebellion and impulse. It is every action that you take every day. So we have earth, where it's everything you can touch. Air is everything you think about. And fire is all of the actions that you make. Feel free to also read. I know that I wrote on this with white, which might not have been the smartest plan. There you go. That might help everybody read it better. So please feel free to read through these as I talk. But so water. Water is all of your emotions. It is every single emotion that you feel. And remember that, like I said, all of these definitions of the elements were all created in very ancient times. These are all theoretical ideologies based on elemental magic and elemental work. So back when these were first created as an ideology for elemental magic, we didn't really understand that emotions and thought both come from the same place. Whereas now in 2022, we understand that emotions, as well as actions and personality, and all of those things are all going to come from your brain and from the exact same place. Whereas in ancient times, that was not the case. That was not something that we fully understood as fact. And so we tended to separate personality and action and emotion and thought and logical analytics and all of those things. So water is emotion, and it is every emotion. So a lot of times people either kind of correlate water with either sadness or kind of the flow and transition of emotions. It is also interpreted as a element that correlates with the moon. And though all of those things are very true, we also have to remember that water is happiness, and water is joy and euphoria, and water is anger and rage, and water is all of the emotions. It is all of our phases in life when it has to do with the way that we react to them emotionally. So yes, water is emotion. So you have earth, which is everything you can touch, air, which is everything that you think, fire is everything that you do and act upon, and water is everything that you feel. Let me know if you have any questions about the elements. We are going to go into what that means when it comes to working with runes. But I just wanted everybody to have a basic understanding. When I start talking about how different runes correlate with different elements, I wanted you to know exactly what that means. So the next thing that we are going to go over, which takes up a lot of time, but it is something that I feel like everybody needs to know before we jump in next, which is what we are going to jump into, is learning the next runes on our list, which we have actually only gone over the first 3. So we are going to dive into all the rest. Oh, of course, yes. So the book is called The Runes Workbook. Let me type that out. Here we go. The Runes Workbook by Leon D. Wild. There you go. So the name and author of the book are all in the chat, just so everybody knows.
Just to go back, you mentioned like for the 4 elements what they were, and yes. I missed out earth. What was that one represented to? Earth? Yes.
Earth is every single thing that we can touch and feel. So it is normally related to things like your home, your money, your wealth, prosperity, your crops and food, things like that. But it is anything you can touch. So it can be anything. It can be your car. It can be any of your personal possessions. It can be your family. It can be anything that you can physically touch that exists on the physical plane.
And if you go back and watch the first class, Alex really spent a lot of time on all of this stuff too.
I do. I'm so glad you watched it. So the next thing that we are going to go over, and we are going to go over it kind of quick because it is in all the other classes and all of the other videos. But if you're going to understand the things that I'm saying and you're going to be able to participate in the activities that we have going on in this class, you're going to have to know this part. So those of you who have watched all of my other classes, welcome to numerology. Which every single class that I teach, I go over numerology. Numerology is one of my favorite subjects. It's something the very first thing I started studying when I was about 6 years old. So numerology. So numerology, when it comes to Norse mythology and Norse spirituality, there are very different cultures. Like when we say Norse mythology, a lot of people kind of consider it to be a monolith, and it's not. There are many different cultures that existed within the people of Norway in ancient times. And they did not all follow the exact same spirituality. There are huge similarities for sure, but they differ depending on where you lived and depending on what culture you followed. So anyway, the numerology that they used for divination work when it came to working with runes was once again derived from Arabic numerology. Most things that you do when working with numbers actually derived from Arabic numerology or Arabic numerals. Arabic numerals, for those of you who don't know, are the numbers that you use today in math or whenever you're using numbers. So the number 1 through 9, those are all Arabic numerals. And Arabic numerology is what coined most of the things that you do with numerology today. So if you're interested in astrology and you are interested in what we would call tropical astrology, which most people relate to coming from Europe, it did, but the numerology that is used within astrology is all Arabic. Same thing with most magical practices. They used a lot of Arabic numerology for all of their practices. Arabic numerology stemmed from, of course, Arabic countries, but as well as North Africa, or what we would call now the borders of Egypt. So, numerology. I am going to skim over these kind of like I did with elements. So, if when we do our activity, it is going to require you to know at least the basics of these numbers. So I would encourage you to use whatever device you're on to go to the website and go to this page because you're going to need it later in the class. So number 1 is the beginning of everything. So number 1 is the creation and manifestation of an idea or a reaction or a physical journey. But number 1 is the beginning. Also notice that it gives you the definition of what this number would be if it came up upside down. And that is because when you're reading with runes, some rune readers believe that you should read the rune when it appears upside down. So that is why there are numerology definitions that work with the rune being upside down or the number being upside down. Number 2 is the decision. It is your ideas coming together. So you have already gone through number 1. You have already started something. You have already thought of something. You've already come up with the idea. You've already started the physical journey of whatever it is. And now your ideas are coming together and you have reached a fork in the road and it is time to make a decision. Number 3, you have started the idea. You have come up with the idea. You have started the journey. You have made the necessary decisions. And now you have come to a place of accomplishment. 3 is smaller accomplishment. It is also singular accomplishment, which means that you completed and accomplished and succeeded in most of this on your own. The reason that's important is because we are going to get to the number 6. The number 6 is group accomplishment, where you completed and accomplished and succeeded in something with a larger group of people. Please remember to read the definitions of these because I am giving you the very, very, very basic definition just so that we don't spend an hour on numerology. Especially, since we already went through this in other classes. But 3 is your singular accomplishment. You have come to a place where all of your ideas and all of your decision making and everything have come together and you have accomplished part of or even all of your goal, depending on how big or small your goal was. And this is celebration. Number 3 is also the number of friendship, but that is also accomplishment. When you think about every single thing in life, because these numbers are not just, These are not just like bullet listed goals. This is accomplishment in every sense of the word, depending on what you asked about. So if you're giving somebody a runes reading and they asked about friendship and whether or not they are going to make friends at their new school or at their new job, and 3 comes up, that is the accomplishment and success in making new friends. It all depends very much on their question. It also depends on the element that it is tied with, which we will talk about as well. So 3 is accomplishment in every sense of the word. And it is celebration of individual success and accomplishment and friendship, being excited, success, happiness. The number 4. The number 4 is stability. Now, stability can come in many different forms. Usually 4 is structure. It is strong, disciplined, stable. It is routine. So now that you have gone from number 1, where the creation of the idea happened, number 2, where you made all of the decisions necessary, number 3, where you have self and individualized accomplishment, number 4, you have reached a place where you get to kind of reap what you sow. You are sitting in the stability of feeling comfortable in your success. So you feel as though you have created a decent routine. You feel as though you are stable. You feel as though you are complacent, and this is a nice place to hang out and rest for a while. There are some questions, so one sec. Yes, exactly. Thank you. Yep, cool. Awesome. Exactly. So every rune has a number tied to it. That's why we're talking about numerology, just so everybody knows. Every single rune has its own number based on Arabic numerology. So we're going to stop at 4 for a second, which is a great place to start because 4 is stability and rest. But so the way that you read runes, already within the first 20 minutes of this class, you already understand how to read in a very basic way, how to read the runes. And let me tell you why. The way to read the rune in a very basic sense is to take the rune's element, mix it with the rune's numerology, and now you have the definition of the rune. So you'll notice that. You will notice as we go through the runes that really, at their core, in a very basic sense, the definition of the rune is just its element and its numerology put together. And that's it. Now you have the definition of the rune. So as long as you know its numerology and you know its element, then you can kind of guess what it means. It's also good, of course, to know what it means. But this is a very, very helpful tool so that you could understand what the rune means solely based on its numerology and its element. So for example, we have the Fehu rune. So the Fehu rune is usually considered the first letter in the Elder Futhark alphabet. So the Fehu rune is the number 1. The Fehu rune is also the element of earth. So if you didn't know the definition of the Fehu rune and you didn't know what it symbolized and you didn't know what it meant, but you know that it's the number 1 and it's earth, what are some things that you might think that the Fehu rune represents?
Life. Like regrowth.
Yes. I'm going to look at the chat to see if people... Yes, they all have an element assigned as well.
It can mean starting a new job too.
Yes, exactly. Totally. So yes, the Fehu rune, if you read the definition of the actual rune's definition is wealth, and especially new wealth and new gold and new cattle and new crops and new prosperity at the beginning of a new journey when it comes to succeeding in giving yourself the wealth that you desire. And that doesn't always mean money. Remember that we said that this rune symbolizes earth. So that can mean prosperity and wealth in whatever way you perceive prosperity and wealth. And that's not money to everybody. Everybody has their own idea of what it would mean to them to feel prosperous and to feel wealthy. And it's not always just money. It is the beginning of new power, the circulation of wealth and money and power, and also of cattle and of crops and of feeling well fed and well nourished and growing and all of those things. So that is what the Fehu rune represents. So it would have been so easy to get that just based on its numerology and its element of being number one, which is why it's new wealth and new prosperity and new cattle and all of those things. And just like you said, a new job or a new path in life when it comes to welcoming in your new goals and your new idea of what feeling prosperous means. And its element of earth. So we could have gotten all of that from just the numerology and the element. So that's why the numerology and the element are so important. So, number 4. Number 4, like I said, is stability. It is routine. It is structure. It is rest. And it is kind of just that rest period in between where you feel stable and you feel able to rest and you feel able to just sit and feel happy in everything that you have accomplished. But if you stay in 4 for too long, it can turn very quickly to stagnation. It can turn very quickly to depression. It can turn very quickly into kind of feeling like you're not going anywhere at all, which all of us need. So rest in number 4 are very, very important. They're something that every single person needs, but you can't spend your entire life in 4. It won't work. And then what happens when you leave your rest? You get 5, and 5 is chaos. And 5 is the essence of chaos. It is everything chaotic. And now chaos can be absolutely wonderful. I can tell you that every single time I have ever attempted to accomplish something, it has always been met with chaos. That could just be a me thing. But usually when you embark on something new, or even you are just trying to really better yourself, you are trying to become a better person, you are trying to work more on your skills, on your magic, on your craft, on learning, on going to school, anything like that, it is always met with chaos. It is always met with disorganization. It is always met with being overwhelmed. It is always met with the inability to relax, spreading yourself too thin, all of those things. And that is the number 5. And number 5, when it is presented right side up, it is usually necessary chaos. Everybody has to go through chaos. Everybody has to, at one point in their life, or usually much more than just once, has to feel overwhelmed and has to feel chaotic and feel like life is extremely draining and disorganized and crazy. And that is 5. And then when it shows upside down, that is usually a sign that the chaos has gotten too intense, which I'm sure based on current events, a lot of us have probably had upside down fives come up in any of our spiritual work. A lot, because life is crazy right now.
When it's upright, it's like a controlled chaos, like something you can manage, right? You know?
Exactly. Yep. And yeah, when it's upside down, it is usually something that you cannot manage. It is too overwhelming. It is too intense. And you definitely have to sit down and figure out what you can do to lighten the load and to make things a little bit easier, because an upside down 5 is not sustainable, and it will lead to things that are either self-destructive or just destructive in general. And being too overwhelmed and being bombarded with too much chaos that you cannot handle, that is not sustainable, can lead to really bad things. So that is the 5. 6, we already talked about 6. So 6 is group accomplishment. The metaphor that I really like to give for this one is college. I use college a lot. I'm in college, in case anybody didn't know that. But yes, so 6 is group accomplishment. So meaning that it took a lot of people in order for you to succeed in this huge goal that you have succeeded in. It is usually a really big goal. It is usually something that you've been working really hard at for a long time. And that is why I use college, is because not only have you been working on it for a long time, so 6 would be like graduating from college. Not only have you been working on it for a long time, but it also took your professors, it took your friends, it took your study groups, it probably took the dude who works at the cafe, it probably took the librarian and all of the other people to help you succeed in this goal. And so that is why graduating from college would be the number 6. Number 7. Number 7 represents the path that you are on in life. This one is very simple. It can be an emotional journey. And remember, this all depends on the element. So we are matching the element with the number. So if you get the number 7 and you get water, then you are going on an emotional journey. You are on an emotional path. If you get 7 and you get earth, you are on a physical journey, a physical path. You have very physical goals that involve things that you can touch and feel. If 7 comes up upright, you are on the right path. If 7 comes up upside down, you are not on the right path. For any of you, kind of side note, for any of you who are interested in tarot, these are the exact same definitions of the minor arcana, by the way.
And that's awesome.
Yeah, just so you know, they both stem from Arabic numerology, as does everything. The number 8. The number 8 is about a strong connection to a person, place, or thing, depending on the element. So it is a connection that is heavily rooted in your emotions or your actions or your earthly possessions or thoughts, depending on which element it correlates with. So this can mean many things. There are many different reasons why a connection would come up in your reading. Having a very strong connection with a person, place, thing, or thought, or emotion, upside down can kind of mean an obsession, or an unhealthy, toxic relationship, an unhealthy, toxic connection with something that you just can't seem to let go of. And right side up, it can be a beautiful, amazing connection that you need for your peace, for your happiness, for your comfort, for your success. Also, kind of one of those funny things about 8, a connection, a really deep connection, can also mean travel. So if you get like earth and 8, that can very often mean that you have a connection with a very physical place, because remember, earth is something that we can touch. So you have a very specific connection with a place, which can mean that you're traveling there. Actually, runes are a little bit easier to understand than tarot, because tarot has the major arcana, which are like a whole fun, beautiful thing that came from Italy, and that does not involve really simple elemental work and numerology. Instead, it includes European versions of astrology, which get very intense and complicated, and the planets and all that. So yeah, I understand this better than tarot sometimes too, even though I've been studying tarot longer. But yes, this is more simple. 9. So the number 9 represents a means to an end. 9 basically means that you are almost done. You are almost at the end of your journey. The end is in sight. This can be a graduation, a promotion, the end of a grieving cycle. You are almost done creating an idea. You have thought it out and you're ready to start acting on it. Whatever it is, 9, you are almost done. You are almost to the end of something. And if it's right side up, then everything is lined up for your success. And you are almost done and everything is going to go really well at the end. And you are going to be very pleased with the journey that you went down. If it is upside down, you might not be ready to let it go. You might not be ready for it to be over. If it's upside down, it might be the end of a friendship, the end of a relationship, and you're not happy about the end of the relationship. The end of something that makes you sad. The number 10, and that is it. So the number 10 is we are all done. You are completely finished. You are at the end of an emotional, physical, or mental journey, and you are ready to start something new. So 9 is very much like it's ending. 10 is like it's done. It is done. It is over. You forgot about it. You are ready to start something new. Not really that you forgot about it, but you know, it is done. And you are ready to start something new. You are probably already in the process of starting something new. And then that would lead you back again to 1. And the cycle begins again. Does anybody have any questions about numerology? I know I went super fast, so please ask me all the questions that you have. Yeah.
Do we get these slides printed out later?
Yes, you totally can. This is all on the website though.
Okay.
Yep. So I put the website into the chat, and all of this, if you just go to the study guide section and you click on runes, all of this is on the website and you can print it out if you would like. So I'm going to give it a minute. Everybody can kind of follow along. If you're following along on the website already, feel free to kind of, I'll give everybody a minute to finish reading, to think of any questions that they might have. Yes, each number does have the ability to be positive or negative. Not all of them flip upside down like that. So, like not all of them upside down are negative necessarily. Like 3. 3 is a good example. 3 upside down is not negative. I guess it is more negative than right side up. So I guess you're right. Yes. It is kind of like an emptiness within your success. So like you did succeed. You succeeded. You still have that sense of accomplishment, that sense of you, that sense of, yeah, you accomplished it and you succeeded, but it wasn't exactly what you wanted it to be. The success doesn't feel as good, or it's like, I know I always use school. I am so sorry. I know there are lots of other things in the world than school, but like, let's say you majored in psychology, which was totally something I did. And then you got through and you finished your class, which, remember, 3 would be more like finishing a class, not graduating. So you finished your class, you succeeded, you got an A, but you're like, turns out I don't even really like psychology. And so it's still, you accomplished it. You got an A in the class and it was great, but now you don't like psychology. And so now you have to change. So that would kind of be like the upside down 3. Okay, so if there are no more questions, which I'll give just like 1 more minute here. Okay, we are going to actually watch a video, which I think is I think watching videos are a fun way to kind of segue into talking about actual runes rather than just the elements. So I have my 2 favorite runes YouTubers. One of them is this guy. His name is Dr. Jackson Crawford. For those of you who don't know, I am from Colorado. I live in Colorado, and he is actually a professor in Colorado. And he teaches at multiple universities throughout Colorado, and he teaches about runes. He has also written 4 amazing books that I have read all of them, where he translates ancient poetry that are written in the runic alphabet, which is so cool. It is really, really cool. So he's one of my favorite people to listen to when it comes to runes. But so the reason that we are going to watch both of them, we're not going to watch both of them at the same time or like right next to each other, but we are going to watch both of them. The reason we're going to do that is because this guy does not actually use runes for magical purposes, nor does he really. He might believe in their magic. He might believe in the magic that was used by ancient Norse people when it comes to runes, but he makes it very clear that his videos are not about that. His videos are very anthropological. They are very historical, which is what I was explaining to everybody at the beginning of this class. I think, in my opinion, the only way to truly understand Norse mythology and runes is if you get both sides. You get the anthropological, factual, historical information that is strictly based on science and anthropology, and you understand the runes as they were written as an alphabet. But then you also get the other side, where the runes were used for spells. And he also has a lot of those videos as well, explaining how runes were used for spells. So I think that we should get both. So one of my favorite YouTubers for listening to the anthropology and history of Norse mythology, the Norse people, the Vikings, and runes themselves is Dr. Jackson Crawford. My favorite YouTuber that talks about the magic of runes and the history of the gods is this wonderful man here. I actually don't know his name, but his page name is The Wisdom of Odin. And I love his videos too, so you get both sides. So the first one we're going to watch is Dr. Jackson Crawford, and then we are going to learn about the runes and start learning how to read runes, which we've already done for 40 minutes, but we're going to actually start getting into the actual runic symbols. And after we do that, we are going to watch this wonderful dude. So here we go. Hang on. He's also from Colorado, as I told you before, so you get to see all the lovely scenery of Colorado in his videos.
Several stages in the history of the alphabet.
Sorry. Come on. There we go.
Hi, I'm Old Norse Specialist Jackson Crawford. Recently, on my channel and on the channel of my very good friend, Dr. Luke Gordon, we have reviewed several stages in the history of the alphabet that we use still to write English today, the Roman alphabet. And along the way, Luke and I have looked at the wide variety of different shapes that our basic family of alphabetic scripts has taken in the past, well, 2,000 or so years. And that's gotten me to rethink some of my ideas about the origin of an alphabet that people are very concerned about in the circles that I talk to, which is the runes. And so what I've considered doing is going through the runic alphabet letter by letter, something like what Luke is doing letter by letter on his channel with the Roman alphabet and its ancestor alphabet. But first of all, I want to present some of the basic facts that I know about the origin of the runes, some of the reasons why I am not convinced of the very common opinion that they derive from the Roman alphabet, our alphabet, as the Romans used it, and some of the new data that's come to my attention in the last few years about this very interesting question. Now keep in mind, of course, in this video, I am talking about the runes in their primary use, which is as an alphabet. I am not talking about them in the modern capacity that most people think of them in, which is as magical symbols, which they really aren't in the ancient and medieval periods, when they can be used to write inscriptions of magical content, but then the magic is in the words, not in the symbols used to write them. Fundamentally, when you look at the runes, Futhark, you're looking at nothing more inherently magical than our letters ABC, except that ABC can be used, just like the runes, to spell out things that are magical in their content. I made a lot of other videos about this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, or in discussing anything about the origin of the runes after this. All right, so the reason that it's so tempting to think that the runic alphabet must derive from the Roman alphabet is, well, there's really kind of two sides of this. One is obviously chronology. The oldest known datable inscription in runes, the Vimosacom, is dated to about 160 AD. Now, we know that people speaking Germanic languages were already in contact with the Roman Empire by this time. In fact, Tacitus had already written his famous book, Germania. Caesar, of course, had long since written his commentaries on the Gallic Wars. So these cultures had been in contact. That's an easy way for the speakers of Germanic languages to get an alphabet. And it doesn't require us to assume that there are centuries of undiscovered inscriptions. Right? We wouldn't necessarily assume that the Vimosacom was the very first thing ever written in runes. It's pretty improbable. But it would be surprising kind of that there's not anything firmable that's much earlier than that. There's some actually pretty possible inscriptions that are earlier, but the Vimosacom, of course, has to be our anchor point because it's datable. And obviously, not a hoax. Another reason why it's tempting to think that maybe the Roman alphabet is the source of the runes is that some letters are extremely similar to the Roman alphabet letters that mean the same thing. So, of course,
I do want to pause it for a second and make sure that everybody knows. So what he's talking about is, which is something that is really important when discussing runes work and magic with runes, is number one, the exact date of when runes actually existed. We don't know. So he's theorizing. We do not know when the very first time people used the runic alphabet was. He is talking about the actual runes that we use for divination work, the ones that you've seen. The Elder Futhark alphabet, which is like the one that I just told you, like the Fehu rune and all of the runes that we are going to be going over today. He is talking about that alphabet and when was the very first time it was ever seen or used to write absolutely anything. And there is still a debate going on when it comes to people who actually study Norse mythology or Norse culture in an anthropological way. There is still a debate going on of whether or not wow, Alex, Germanic, the European alphabet came first, the one that we use today, or whether or not the Elder Futhark alphabet, the Norse alphabet, came first, which is still technically the European alphabet, but Germanic sounds wrong, and I'm pronouncing it wrong, and for some reason I am having a brain fart. So, whether or not which alphabet came first is what he is talking about, which is actually really important when we talk about using runes for spell work, and we talk about the mythology of the Norse people. And whether or not the Greek mythology or Norse mythology came first, and which alphabet came first, which can also help us understand which type of magic came first, which type of spell work came first, and what most spells were written in Norway, and what most magic was written in back then when it comes to that area of Europe. Just so everyone knows what he's talking about. He didn't really introduce it.
Obvious ones are the F, the R, the K sound, which looks like a C, which is what the Romans used for the K sound. And then there's a few others that, you know, you could pretty easily see as just being flipped versions of the Roman letters, the U, the L. Okay. But I reject the notion that the runic alphabet is from the Roman alphabet for systematic reasons. The runes don't work like the Roman Empire version of the Roman alphabet as a system. So to me, the Roman alphabet can't then be its source. And there's other reasons too, but I think the systematic arguments are the strongest. And the very strongest out of those systematic arguments is that the Roman alphabet doesn't distinguish the vowels, the vowel sounds E and U, written I and U or I and B, from the consonant sounds Y, written J, today, and W. Right? It writes both E and Y as a letter I, and both U and W as a letter U or V. It really looks like a V in the imperial period. Now, the runes are quite different and actually distinguish E from Y, it's two different runes, and U from W, it's two different runes. Now, they're not the only alphabet to do that. In fact, the Roman alphabet is really kind of the outlier in not distinguishing these. But the inspiration for distinguishing those would not come from the Roman alphabet. So that's a systematic difference. Another trace of a systematic difference can be seen in the vowels. You can look at the 5 vowels of the Roman alphabet. I'm leaving out Y because it's only used in the imperial period to write words borrowed from Greek. You look at the 5 classic vowels, the A, E, I, O, U, and you can look at the way those are written in runes, and you can see 4 letters that have a plausible, obvious connection to the letters of the Roman alphabet. Now, of course, the easiest one is the I, the U is only flipped, but in fact, the shape of the A is a quite common shape of the letter A in Alpine alphabets used to write now forgotten languages 2,000, 2,500 years ago in the Alps, and I'm going to come back to some of those. So it's at least a plausible connection to the source of Latin A, which is the Etruscan alphabet, which is also the source of those Alpine alphabets. The E is a little bit more tortuous. It could be a flipped E, right, kind of a rotated E or epsilon. I've actually seen that in writing in those Alpine alphabets. Again, I'm going to come back to those. But it's an innovation that could occur to someone else too. The O is what's kind of striking in not matching up with the Roman alphabet or its source, the Etruscan alphabet, because this looks like the Greek letter omega. And curiously, it's also placed at the end of the Elder Futhark alphabet, just like omega is in the Greek alphabet. Now, that might not tell us that much, given that the runes are in such a jumbled order compared to other alphabets. And I still don't have a real plausible explanation for why. But the fact that it's added at the end might be significant together with the fact that it looks like an omega. Now, to me, that omega shape and the fact that it's tacked on at the very end suggests that it's not borrowed from the same source as the other four. Now, as I've hinted already, I think the source for the other four is pretty plausibly in those Alpine alphabets. Now, what you see in the Alps, starting around the late 600s BC, and even just barely into the 1st century AD, is there's a cluster of languages not necessarily actually related to each other. We have the probably non-Indo-European Communic, we have the Celtic language Lepontic, we have the Italic language Phonetic, the non-Indo-European language Rhaetic, which might be related to Etruscan. And they're all written in alphabets that are derived from the Etruscan version of the Greek alphabet. Curiously, not necessarily the northern Etruscan variety. Sometimes they have sort of southern Etruscan looks. And then it also looks like they were passed on the Greek alphabet by the Etruscans with some of the letters the Etruscans didn't use. Right? People get attached to alphabets and recite letters as part of them, even when they don't use them in writing their own language. As you can see in the many languages of Europe that don't use K or C, but still included as part of their alphabet and reciting the alphabet and use it in writing.
Okay. In all honesty, feel free to look up Dr. Jackson Crawford on YouTube if you would like to finish that video. I really enjoyed it, but now that I'm kind of watching through it, it's not really worth spending 20 minutes of our class on. I also think a couple people got bored and left. So we're gonna continue. Basically what I wanted you to get out of that video, the reason that I even really kind of wanted to watch it, and I had previously watched it a while ago before this class, was to explain a few things. So one of the biggest reasons why I wanted it to go through and watch that video, hang on. So one of the reasons why I wanted to go through and watch that video was because I wanted to discuss and talk about the fact that, number one, any book or any source that you find on the internet or that you find in literature or anything like that, that starts to talk about how we know for a fact that the runic alphabet was, created 2,200 years ago, which is usually something that I see, or I'll see something like 1,900 years ago and things like that. Any literature that you read online or in books that tells you that we know for a fact that it was created during those time periods is false information. I'm not saying that that author or whatever is trying to produce false information, but they might have gotten it from a source that is also, it's just these ancient cultures, we don't know. And that was kind of what I wanted you to get out of that video. And I feel like 20 minutes of watching that video was a lot to just kind of explain that one thing. Also, so we don't know exactly. We know it was probably around 2,000 years ago, but we're not completely sure. Also, if any literature that you read tries to say that they know the origin of the language, the origin of the written language of the Norse people, that is also not completely true information. We don't know. Even doctors who have PhDs in studying runes, which is what his PhD is in, the runic alphabet, he doesn't know. We don't know. It is not information that we have yet. And so make sure that when you are reading information about the runes, that if you do come across an article that says, or a piece of writing that says that we know exactly when the alphabet was created, we know exactly what the letters mean, and we know exactly where they come from, where they stem from, and what languages they're based off of, that is untrue. We don't. And as he was explaining, a lot of people who study this think that they came from the Roman alphabet. But a lot of people, such as him, do not think that they came from the Roman alphabet. Instead, they think that they were derived and took influence from ancient Alpine languages, which would have been much, 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 much older than the Roman alphabet. So we are not sure what language influenced the runic alphabet, the Elder Futhark runic alphabet. We are not sure. We are also unsure of exactly what they mean, which is why I start this class with, instead of giving you the exact definitions of each rune, instead we work backwards. We talk about the elements that they're based off of, because due to the writings that we have from ancient Norse people, which we do have a lot of poetry and a lot of writings from ancient Norse people, we can determine the elemental work that they did. We can determine what kind of numerology they followed, which means that we can infer what each rune means. And we also have a lot of research that shows what each rune means, but we don't know exactly what each rune means, especially when it comes to using them for magic. So that is why I work backwards. So, now that we have like 5 people that left, but we are going to start going over the runes and each one and what they mean and how to use them for magical purposes. So if you go to the website, nope. If you go to the website and you go to the runes section, you will see rune symbolism. So we are going to start with the Fehu rune. We are going to go very quickly through these first 2 to 3 runes because we've already gone over them in other classes. So the Fehu runes, thanks, Stephanie. But so the Fehu rune is represented by the number 1, which now we know what that means. It is also represented by the element of earth, and now we know what that means. And its symbolism is what we already talked about. We talked about how on here, it's just going to give you a keyword. I just give everybody a keyword. So the keyword is wealth, but like we discussed, it is also cattle. It is also crops. Cattle was a very, very big deal, obviously, and symbolized, like cattle itself symbolized wealth, symbolized prosperity, symbolized somebody who was well fed and well taken care of and who had money and had land. So the Fehu rune represents the number 1, represents earth, and represents cattle and wealth, prosperity. It represents the circulation of energy and wealth and power. It also represents brand new wealth and brand new prosperity, and finally achieving the goals of wealth and prosperity. And like I said, wealth and prosperity do not always have to equal money. In many ancient cultures, that is not necessarily what it represented. There are many definitions of wealth and prosperity and whatever that means to you. And then we are going to discuss the incantation or guldra. So if any of you are using runes, there are many different ways to use runes. Of course, the most well-known way, I guess, within the magic community or within the witchcraft community is using them for divination purposes, such as reading your runes. So having a divination master or a divination reader pull runes and read your future, read your past, read your personality, things like that. That is what it is, at least what I have found, is most well known. But there's many different ways that you can do it. You can use it as a sigil. So one of my favorite ways to use runes is to take the runes that I really want to manifest in my life. So let's say I'm taking Fehu and I'm really trying it to manifest wealth and prosperity and my own version of cattle. And I would take that rune and draw it on the pot where I want to grow a plant. And as the plant grows, so does my manifestation of wealth and prosperity. And so you can use the runes just as a sigil to draw on your notebooks for school. If you're trying to do really well in school, there are lots of runes that represent wisdom and intelligence, and you can write the rune on top of your school journal. If you're at work and you're really trying to get a promotion, you can write the rune. I would use the Fehu rune on your pens and your pencils. You can write it on your workbooks. You can write it on, have it as your computer screen wallpaper. Sigils work in many different ways. And so you can use it that way. You can also use it in a spell. So if you are casting a circle and you are creating your own spell, you can use runes to represent big, giant ideologies where, let's say, you know, you are trying to do a spell for wealth and prosperity, but you don't have a lot of the materials that you need, when really, honestly, you don't really need all of those new fancy materials that people like to say that you need. But a great replacement for any materials that you might not have would just be carving the Fehu rune onto whatever, drawing it on a stone or a rock, or drawing it on a piece of paper and using it as part of your spell. And one of the ways that you can also use it inside of your circle and as part of your spell work is by reciting the guldra or the incantation, where in this case for Fehu, that would be Fe, 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 Fu, 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 Fehu, Fehu, Fehu. And that is the incantation or guldra. And you can say and use those words and chant them over and over again to help channel and manifest the power of the Fehu rune. Next, we have the Uruz rune. The Uruz rune is number 2. It is water. It is a representation of healing and manifestation. Of healing and transformation, which, like I already said, if you were to only see the numerology 2 and the element water, you could already infer that Uruz would have something to do with healing because it is water, something to do with emotions and phases and transformation, and that it would also have to do with your emotions, which it does. It is emotional strength, emotional vitality. It is your mental and physical health and your emotional health. It is your fearlessness. It is your kindness and empathy. It is anything that makes you feel emotionally strong, emotionally healed, and transforming in to the person you want to be when it comes to the way that you feel and the way that you make others feel. So that is Uruz. And then you have the incantation under there for Uruz. So the next one that we are going to go over, which we did already go over as well if you read some, or if you look at some of the other videos, but is the Thurisaz rune. The Thurisaz rune is not on here. So what I'm actually going to do, I have to put them on the website. I've been a little slow. I need to get that done. But runes. Okay, so I'm going to pull up an image right here of the runes alphabet. Nope, that's not right. That's not the one that we want. We want Elder Futhark. Haha, is this Elder Futhark? It is, but you cannot really read the bottom. That's kind of annoying. Aha, there we go. Okay, so Thurisaz is the third rune that you see on there. So if I was to tell you that Thurisaz represents the number 3, and that it is also a representation of air, what would you think that it means? Does anybody have an answer for what you think the Thurisaz rune means based off of it being 3 and air?
It's accomplishment with your thoughts and your like logic, like you logically you succeeded in some kind of logical or thought or an idea.
Yes. Beautiful. See how easy it is to do it with the numerology and elements? That was beautiful. Yes. Awesome.
Would it also mean that your idea is going to be a successful one?
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
Yes. So the Thurisaz rune is actually related to Thor, which you can kind of tell in its name. But yes, so this is the rune of accomplishment, and as told by the number 3. But it is also air. So it is very much wisdom and your ideas manifesting, just like you guys said, your ideas manifesting in a way that makes you feel accomplished and successful. It is also the rune of resistance. It is the rune of willpower. But a lot of this is based in your mindset of willpower. So even though Thor, yes, obviously, is immensely physically strong and has the world's strongest weapon as well. But to be a good warrior, to be Thor, to be one of the world's greatest warriors, you also need mental resistance and mental willpower. You need the ability to have a strong mind, just as you have a strong body. And that is kind of the representation of Thurisaz, is having that immensely strong willpower of the mind, and to also have the want to fight against your enemies, the want to fight against your own, to fight against your own mind, in the sense that when your own mind is telling you that you suck and that you aren't brave enough and that you aren't strong enough and that you aren't intelligent enough and all of those things, to be able to have the willpower and the mental capacity and ability to fight against that and to say, no, I am strong enough and I am wise enough and I am intelligent enough and all of those things. It is mental fortitude and willpower and strength when it comes to the way that you think. It is also, because it is Thor, It is also the sky. It is a representation of the sky and the wind and lightning and all of those wonderful things as well that represent air. Lightning is probably like fire and air put together, but you know. And it is also resistance and all of that. So the Galdra, or incantation for that one, is Thurisaz, 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 Thor, 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 Thi, 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 Tha, 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 Thurisaz, Thurisaz, Thurisaz. And also this rune is supposed to look like Thor's hammer as well. A lot of people say that, you know, it looks like a P, which, I mean, kind of, but the hammer also looks like a P. So anyway, it is supposed to be in the shape of Thor's hammer. And it is also, if you are trying to do magic, where you are trying to fight against something that someone has done to you. Say you are trying to do a cord cutting ritual where you are trying to cut someone out of your life because they are extremely toxic, or you are trying to fight against someone who is bullying you or causing harm to you. This would be the best rune to use, invoking the strength and power of Thor and Thor's hammer to fight against your enemies, which is wonderful. We also have to remember too that when we are talking about Norse mythology and Norse paganism, you really need to throw this very Wiccan idea out of your mind. The idea that you harm none. That is a very Wiccan ideology, as well as from other pagan spiritualities, but it is not a Norse ideology in any way, shape, or form. The Norse people were definitely not about harming none, especially if your trade was being a Viking or your career was being a Viking. Then, yeah, no.
Alex, can you repeat the Galdra again for this?
Of course. It is Thurisaz, Thurisaz, Thurisaz. You can get the spelling for Thurisaz right here on the screen.
Yeah.
And then Thor, Thor, Thor. Thi, 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 which is Thi, Thi. Tha, 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 which is Tha. And Thurisaz, Thurisaz, Thurisaz.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. So if you are trying to do any magic or spell work that also might have to do with not necessarily doing horrible things to others, because I don't ever want to promote that, but we all need self-defense. Occasionally in life, you will need self-defense, and this would be a fantastic rune for self-defense and self-protection. The next rune that we are going to go over today is the Ansuz rune. So that is the next one. That's actually really interesting that on this stock photo that I happen to be looking at, that they would label urus as strength. Do not take the definitions from this chart that you see here. Those definitions are not right. I mean, I guess emotional strength, but just saying strength is not, it's not a good definition. Anyway, so we have Ansuz. Ansuz is going to be the number 4 in numerology. And also, oh, don't be sorry. It's cool. And also, this is also going to be air. So one thing that I really like to do with Thurisaz and Ansuz, which is kind of something that I mentioned, but it kind of slipped my mind. Anyway, I would think of Thurisaz very much as if fire and air were to meet each other. There are definitely runes readers out there that correlate Thurisaz with fire instead of air, because instead of really relating it to that state of mind that you need to be a warrior, the state of wisdom that you need to be a warrior, this everything that I mentioned before, instead they relate it to that action and passion and fire that you need within you to be a warrior. Since Thurisaz is probably one of the only runes that we're going to go over that really is actually represented by a person. Ansuz on this chart says that it's represented by Odin, and it kind of is, but Odin represents all the runes, so it not so much. But Thurisaz is represented by Thor. So because it is a person, it is a god, it doesn't necessarily fall under a single element. I would definitely say you would be right if you said fire, and you would be right if you said air, and you would be right if you said fire and air together. So just as a side note for Thurisaz, I am going to add all of this information to the website. When I add this to the website, Thurisaz, I am going to put under fire and air. It really depends on what runes reader you go to and who you talk to on whether or not that represents fire or air. But Ansuz is 100% air. Just Ansuz is wisdom. That is what it is. Ansuz is wisdom. And solely and only wisdom. So, oh, I'm sorry. Andrea, were you going to ask a question? Sorry.
So you'll put down the numeral and also the element of each of the runes for us?
Yes.
Thank you.
Of course, and that'll be on the website hopefully by today. I don't work tomorrow, so I should be able to stay up all night and get the stuff. So that'll be on the website for you tonight. But yes, so Thurisaz is going to be fire and air, and then Ansuz is the ultimate air sign. So we're going to go over Ansuz. So if you need any type of wisdom or analytical logic, or you are trying to research something, or you are trying to complete a task that is extremely based on education and intelligence and wisdom, you want to invoke the Ansuz rune and everything that the Ansuz rune stands for. And the reason why people associate this with Odin is because Odin is the wise one. Odin is, number one, the ruler over runes. He is the creator of the runes. If any of you haven't heard that story, it's actually a really great story and I would look it up, but basically Odin spends forever trying to figure out how to win Ragnarok. He is the symbol of wisdom because he spends most of his life trying to acquire wisdom. So he's off on his journey trying to figure out how to win in the Battle of Ragnarok, which is a big battle that is going to happen between the giants and the gods. And he wants to win. But the fates, or the divination sisters, the fate sisters, have told him that he is going to lose, that he will lose Ragnarok and he will die. And so in the tree, he does all these things. One of the things involves sacrificing himself to himself by hanging himself from the tree of Yggdrasil. And the runes appear on the side of the tree of Yggdrasil. And it's a much bigger story than that. They don't just appear. There's a lot that goes on. But it's like a 2-hour-long story that I would have to tell you. So anyway, the runes appear on the tree after a lot of stuff, including his sacrifice and death, but sacrificing himself to himself and then coming back to life. And the runes appear on the tree to help give him guidance and wisdom. And the Ansuz rune is then what appears on his head or on his hat. And if you can see the picture, in this book, which you can't really, kind of, no, maybe, okay. But if you see the picture in this book, the Ansuz rune is on his hat. And most of the time, if you ever look up Odin, the Ansuz rune is on top of his hat. And that is why, is because he spends most of his life seeking out how to win Ragnarok and trying to gain all of the magic and all of the wisdom in the entire world, in multiple worlds, in multiple realms. He tries to seek all the wisdom. And even that is like what his, like he gives up his eye to seek wisdom. And so that appears on top of his hat because that is the rune of wisdom, the symbol of wisdom. And that is what he is trying to obtain. Okay, so this is the air sign. We have Ansuz, the symbol of 4, the symbol of air, which is basically rest and wisdom, stability and wisdom. So this is the rune of the mind. This is the rune of consciousness, the rune of wisdom, and the rune that is associated with Odin, that appears on Odin's head. Thurisaz is an actual representation of Thor. It is a way to even invoke Thor into your ritual work. Ansuz is just a rune that appears to Odin, a rune that is loved by Odin, a rune that has very similar aspects and definitions and meanings that would also correlate with the meanings behind the mythology of Odin. But it is not the embodiment, and this would not be something that you can use to like invoke Odin. Yeah? Makes sense? Cool. So it is wisdom, consciousness, everything that has to do with analytics, thought, logic, education, all of those things. And it is said to be so powerful when it comes to wisdom. This rune is such the embodiment of wisdom that this rune itself is almost godly in a sense, that it is the godly powers of wisdom, which is once again why it is associated with Odin. The incantation or galdra for this one is going to be Ansuz, Ansuz, Ansuz. Ah. An. Ow, 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 ow. Ansuz, Ansuz, Ansuz. I'm going to put that on the website, but Ansuz is spelled the way that it is on the screen. N is just A-N. Ow, ow, ow is A-U. And then Ansuz is on the screen. And in the reason that people even came up with the idea that runes were used for divination purposes is because of the story of Odin. So if you are somebody who is really interested in actually using runes for divination work and you want this to be part of your magical practice, I would strongly suggest doing a lot of research on Odin. In our previous classes, I show a lot of videos. We do a lot of information about Odin himself. We go over the story of him sacrificing himself to himself for wisdom, of him sacrificing his eye for wisdom, and a lot of other stories of Odin. Because Odin, the whole reason that runes, the alphabet, is even used for divination work is because Odin used it for divination work. In the mythology, in ancient Norse mythology, Odin used these runes the exact same way that we are about to learn how to use them. He used them this way to be able to find out if he was going to win Ragnarok. So that is why we use them this way, is because Odin used them this way in the mythology. So we are going to go over one more rune, and then we are going to discuss the actual process of reading them. Okay, so we have the next rune here, which is Reidho. So Reidho is going to be the number 5. And this one is the actual representation of fire. So whereas Thurisaz was kind of our first look at fire, but it's very like fire air, whereas this one is the full embodiment of fire. So if I told you,
I think they spelled it wrong on this one. The H is missing.
oh, it is. You're right. There should be an H there. It is Reidho.
Yeah.
So they did. See this chart? Don't go off this chart. Nothing this chart says is correct. But the symbol is written right. That's about it. The rune itself is written correctly. But yeah, it should be Raidho. I didn't even notice that. Thank you. So this is the number 5, and it is fire. So what can we assume from this rune being 5 and fire?
Chaos and action.
Yes, totally.
It's either too much chaos or not enough chaos.
Right? Yep. So this rune, from a lot of these runes, you can kind of really tell, obviously, that these are very ancient. These are thousands of years old. So, modern times, and this is the same when we talk about tarot, and when we talk about any divination or any magical tool that was developed thousands of years ago, obviously, it is not going to 100% translate into the things that we would need or want in America in 2022. So, not that actually a lot of my students aren't in America, but I am. So I have to sometimes think about it in a modern view in the way that Americans would look at it. And that's not bad. Obviously, if you are working with the Fehu rune, most of us are probably not trying to channel bringing cattle into our lives. Most of us, maybe you are. I personally, when I work with the Fehu rune, am not focused on bringing cattle into my life. I wouldn't have space. So this rune is very similar, where it is very focused on riding, whether that be riding horses or riding in any sense of the word. Riding is an acquired skill, and this is very based on horseback riding and being aware of your physical environment. Now, that is also translated into the learning process of any action or skill. So this rune is very focused on learning how to be an amazing horseback rider. But it has, through the years and through magical practice and through the practice of many Norse pagans, as well as many pagans all over the world, it has slowly evolved into a rune that represents the process and action of learning and obtaining any skill, not just horseback riding. So it also represents the goal and the idea of a good counsel. So learning to ride horses and teaching yourself, or learning any skill and teaching yourself, is great. But it is also very important to seek out mentors, to seek out teachers, to seek out people to counsel you. It is also very important to understand the basics and to understand the base. I'm trying to think of another word, the structure. But there is an order in which you learn how to do every skill. If you are learning how to be an artist, you probably cannot just straight jump from not ever knowing how to draw to completing a full animation. That's probably not how it's going to go. You are probably need to learn how to draw stick figures first, and then slowly evolve and learn from people who you love watching how to draw, or a teacher, or just practice every single day for years until you finally end up with the ability to draw well. I don't draw. That was a bad metaphor because I don't really know what the process of learning how to draw is, but you get it.
So like the fundamentals or the remedial aspects of it.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Exactly. So that is why it is also the embodiment of fire, is because it is the process and action of learning a skill. It is the number 5 because it is the chaos of learning a new skill. Learning a new skill that is difficult, that is a skill that is like intense, comes with chaos. It comes with crying. It comes with failure. And it comes with failing over and over and over and over again. It comes with, especially if you talk about this rune thousands of years ago, it comes with falling off of a horse. It comes with being in pain and being sore and having your muscles be sore and having a lot of horrible things probably happen because it's probably really difficult, especially back then. And so this is the process and action of learning a new skill. And this is the beginning of it. And this is the chaotic period of trying and attempting to learn a skill.
Based off your first, definitions of it, it's almost like the academy. You're learning and you have to have your mentors and you have to have the good counsel. So you can use the academy for this one.
That's actually a really good idea. Exactly. So that is such a great idea. So this rune would be great for if you were a brand new student at our academy and you have to go through the process of starting at the beginning. And every professor is going to be a little bit different, and you're trying to seek out counsel, you're trying to seek out mentors, and you're trying to grasp this really big, huge skill that a lot of people who even claim to be good at it have been doing it for 20 years. And it's a lot, and it's very overwhelming. And there really isn't failure in magic, that's not really how it works, but you're going to feel as though you are failing, or that you don't know enough, or that you're not doing it right so much. And there's going to be a lot of chaos and a lot of feeling as though you failed. And yeah, so that is thank you. That's a great example. So yes, this rune involves seeking counsel. That was a really, really big deal in not only Norse paganism, but in most forms of paganism all over the world, whether we talk about indigenous North Americans from here, or we talk about people who practice pagan spiritualities throughout South and Central America, or we even talk about the Celtic spirituality, the Druid spirituality, and in many Middle Eastern pagan spiritualities as well. Usually you didn't just learn it from reading. You didn't just learn anything from just reading. You had to find a teacher. And most things, one of the reasons why it is so difficult and so hard to figure out the actual origins of a lot of these pagan practices that we are discussing and talking about is because a lot of things were taught verbally. A lot of things were oral teachings and oral translations, and everything was done via oral communication. And things were done by finding a mentor and finding a real actual teacher. And that is really important. I am not saying that you can't just read books nowadays or watch videos nowadays. That's fine. But it is really helpful and also very sacred, and to find a teacher. And it is the way that it has been done for thousands of years. And this rune really represents that. So this rune is the representation of the action of finding a teacher, learning a skill, finding counsel, and going through the chaos and the process and the action of learning that skill. Also, horseback riding back then was very linked to ritual and magic. It was very sacred and magical and part of a very sacred ritual process to connect with and to ride a horse. And so ceremonies for like rituals that I'm going to read this paragraph because I really like it, and I keep trying to paraphrase and I'm not doing a good job, so I'm just going to read it to you. So this rune symbolizes not only horseback riding, but also the sacred rituals and sacred skills involved in not only horseback riding, but just in general. And one of the paragraphs in here is Raidho is linked with ritual, especially in relation to the correct way to perform that ritual. While many of the magical aspects of the Norse ways were down to earth, probably only enacted when needed, the things or legal assemblies and seasonal religious ceremonies of the Norse people were held at the proper times with great pride and dedication. Religious ceremonies include those for particular gods or winter nights, Yule, and spring equinox. In addition, marriages, funerals, and naming ceremonies were all religious events with their own special customs and expected performances. This rune represents those performances and the correct way that they should be done. So this rune also represents, like I was kind of saying before, there is a correct way to do things, especially if you're taking from a specific culture. Like if you are saying that you are practicing a Norse sacred ritual, even though Norse paganism is a very open practice, everybody is welcome to celebrate Norse spirituality. Even the Norse people back then didn't have a problem with many different cultures coming in and joining in on their feasts and on their rituals and ceremonies. Even though it is a very open practice, that does not mean that you should change it. That does not mean that you should say, okay, I'm going to do a Norse ritual, but I'm going to change every aspect of it. Then you're just doing your own ritual, and that's fine, but don't call it a Norse ritual. This rune itself represents that exact thing that I just said, that there is a correct way to do things. There is a correct way to ride a horse. There is a correct way to do a Norse winter solstice ritual. There is a correct way to do certain things and there's certain skills and certain rituals and certain practices. And this rune represents that in itself, the correct way to perform certain skills and actions. And the way that you learn the correct way is by learning from a mentor and seeking counsel. That is why it is the representation of fire, because fire is the representation of action. Why do some of these runes have double pictures? That is actually a fantastic question. We might have to change. Thank you. I didn't even notice that. I looked at the first line of runes and I was like, oh, good, they're correct. Those shouldn't all be that way. I was gonna say the reason that like Hagaius does, Hagaius has the two because those are both correct. Like it's the rune itself is not two symbols, but both of those symbols would work, just like Uruz. So Uruz has those two symbols because the upside down V one and the upside down U looking one, which is a horrible explanation, but just so you know what I'm talking about, those are both correct. Some people write it as the upside down V looking one, and some people write it as the upside down U looking one. Both are found in ancient literature and both are found in ancient texts. So both are correct. But it looks like down here when they wrote Ingwas is not usually, not all of those symbols are correct. But if you look at the representation of the sun, and you look at Soilo is both of those are correct as well. So I think the only one that's not really correct is Ingwas. Ingwas is not all three of those are correct. Really, only the middle one is correct. Maybe the left and the middle one are both acceptable, but I haven't really seen it done that way. So that's why, if that helps to answer your question, the reason that there are two like double pictures or like two different symbols is because they're both correct. They're both found in ancient texts and they both represent the same letter. Of course. Okay, so does anybody have any questions so far about Fehu, Uruz, Thurisaz, Ansuz, or Raido?
I don't have any questions, but I love the way, I love your pronunciations because you're authentic, of course, but the tree that the runes appeared on, that the spelling is so, I could never say it. How did you pronounce it?
It's Yggdrasil.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I'm gonna do a phonic way of spelling that so that I know how it's pronounced.
Awesome. No, I do that a lot too. It is definitely hard to get the pronunciations. I don't have a perfect Norse accent, so I try as hard as I can to make sure that I'm pronouncing them correctly, but definitely the Norse accent is.
When you talk about the raid hole,
yes, that
reminds me of the chariot in tarot.
Yes, I could definitely see that for sure. That's yeah, that is a great comparison. So we are going to go over here. Nope, we're gonna go here. Okay. And so remember, this is just the Divination website. All of this information is accessible to you. It is just divinationacademy.com. That is it. All of this information is already here. I wrote it all, but as I said, I cited this because I got a lot of my information from this. If I didn't get my information from this, I also cite that as well because I learned from teachers and mentors who have been studying this for a long time. So I cite them as my source because I didn't learn all of this in a book. I learned this from studying with actual mentors. So we are going to discuss the runes cloth, and I am about to confuse all of you. It's gonna be great, but don't worry. So we are going to watch a very short introduction because I really like this video. We're gonna get rid of Dr. Jackson Crawford real quick because, and this I promise, it's like a 3-minute video. Don't worry. I hate where all of the.
And the plant sure likes him.
So the reason that we are going to watch this really short video is because I want you to understand the worlds of Yggdrasil. And I could just talk about them and describe them, but the pictures are nice and the video is nice. So Tree of Yggdrasil. So these are, I want to make sure, yes, the 9 worlds. Okay, so I really enjoy this video. I think it's pretty cool.
Create a website worthy of your brand. Offer your clients a seamless booking experience.
Yes, thank you, Ed. Okay, here we go.
Yggdrasil is the tree of the worlds in Norse mythology. This colossal tree is the most perfect tree that ever existed. Its roots are so profound that they reach the three most distant worlds. These are Jotunheim, Niflheim, and Helheim. Jotunheim, the frozen kingdom and land of the Jontar, also known as the Ice Giants, was ruled by the king of the Jontar, the giant Thrym. Niflheim, in turn, is a desolated and shadowy world where the ice and the freezing mists make everything even more sinister. This is where Nithog, the giant dragon, lives, who is constantly gnawing at the roots of Yggdrasil. Helheim is the kingdom of Hel, also known as Hela. This is the world of the dead in the Norse mythology. This world is inhabited by the spectra of souls of those who died without glory. Nithavalir, the land of the dwarves, is located above these three profound kingdoms. These beings were quite skillful and capable of impressive things, like Thor's hammer, for instance. Right above the kingdom of the dwarves is Midgard, the land of men and women. This kingdom was surrounded by walls, edified by the gods to protect men. There was also the world of Alfheim, the kingdom of the light elves, creatures of great beauty. Svartalheim also existed, the home of the evil elves, black like tar. Muspelheim is the world of the fire giants, where Surtur live, whose fate is to destroy the Bifrost Bridge, which connects Asgard to the remaining worlds. Vanaheim is the home of the Vanir, for being the land of the gods of fertility, grains, and fruits spring up from the soul in vast amounts. This is the homeland of the goddess Freyr and Freya, offspring of Njord, the Vanir god of the seas. Lastly, in the greatest parts of Yggdrasil is Asgard, the kingdom of the gods Aesir, where Odin ruled sovereignty on his throne. This is also the location of Valhalla, the place where the great warriors who had an honored dead in the battlefield will go to. A giant eagle named Vidrifnir lived on the top of the worlds. The eagle is the arch enemy of the dragon Nithog, and the hate between both creatures was fed by the squirrel Vatatoskr, which ran up and down the world, carrying the insults of both. The squirrel's greatest source of amusement was to amplify the insults it carried even more, and witness the angered reactions of the eagle and the dragon. The leaves and the fruits of the Yggdrasil tree had magical properties. Eating just one of its fruits healed any wound, and some said that its leaves could even retrieve a life already lost. Yggdrasil will always remain beautiful and green, but it will tremble with Ragnarok's arrival.
Okay, so that gives you a very basic kind of layout of the worlds and the tree of Yggdrasil. He did not pronounce many things correctly, so do not go based off of his pronunciation. But
is this a myth tree or is it based on historically a real tree?
it is a tree in mythology. It is a mythological tree.
Okay.
Yes. So now, one thing to remember, not all runes readers, both ancient or modern, use a runes cloth. You do not have to use a runes cloth. I am going to teach you one way to read runes. This is one way. We are also going to learn many other ways. Oops, forgot to turn my, hi. So we are also going to learn many other ways, but this is one way. And one way is using the runes cloth. So on the runes cloth, you have all of the worlds of Yggdrasil. You also have Midgard. Midgard is where we live. So what you would do is you would take the runes and have, whether you have them in a little bag or a little box, it's completely up to you, but you would have them in some sort of container where the person that you are reading cannot see the runes. They have to just like reach their hand in and pick random runes. So they would reach their hand in and pick random runes, and you would allow them to pick however many you would like based on the spread that you're doing. So sometimes I like to have them pick 4, and then we work with those 4. Some readers like to do 3 or 6. It all kind of depends on the type of reading you want to do and the type of spread that you want to do. So certain spreads involve, like, are you trying to give them an idea of what their future is going to look like? Or are you just trying to help give them guidance for a specific situation that they're in? So let's say somebody is having trouble at work and you are just trying to give them a reading to help give them guidance about what they should do at work. Or somebody would like to know what their future is, and you are trying to give them a reading that would determine what their future is going to look like. All of those are going to be different spreads. We are going to go over what the different type of spreads are. Probably not in this class because we are already running out of time. But we are definitely going to do that in the next class. So you would take your rune. Now they have reached their hand in. They have picked out 4 runes, or however many you would like them to pick out. Then they are going to take those runes one by one and throw them onto the runes cloth. The rune represents them. So let's say that they got the Uruz rune. And from what we know, the Uruz rune is number 2, and it is water. And so they are going through a lot of emotional transformation. They are going through a time in their life where they are trying to heal from trauma. They are going through a time in their life where they need a lot of strength and vitality. And they are going through a time in their life where either they are struggling with emotions, depending on whether the rune comes up upside down or right side up, or right now is a time in their life where they feel very emotionally secure and they're filled with vitality. They are filled with happiness and joy. They feel like they are definitely going through a wonderful time of healing, and their transitional period is going well. So if it comes up upside down, then they're struggling a lot with a lot of mental health and emotional things, and they need a lot of strength and healing. Right side up is exactly what I just explained previously. So they throw it onto the runes cloth. Whatever world that it lands in is the situation that they are going through. So if it lands in Muspelheim in the south, then it lands in fire. So the situation, so I guess I shouldn't say the situation they're going through. Okay, ow, ow, ow. Sorry, my cat was attacking my fingers. Okay, so I shouldn't say the situation they're going through. I should say instead what they need to make the situation positive and to go the way they want it to go. So whatever land that they land in is what they need to make the situation go the way that they would like it to go. So let's say they land in Muspelheim in fire. Then it is going to require a lot of action and a lot of, it is going to require probably a lot of people in their life to help them. It is going to require a lot of physical labor, physical action. It is going to require a lot of passion, a lot of dedication to be able to actually move themselves in the direction that would feel successful and meaningful, and that would help them to get to the place that they want to get to when it comes to the question that they asked. So they are going to throw all of these runes into a different world. Or they might all land in the same world, but they're going to throw all of these runes onto the runes cloth. And based on where all of the runes land and what all of the runes are, you are going to get an idea of what they're going through in life and how they can work through these challenges, work through these situations, what situations are they in, and how can they end up in a situation that is positive? How can you answer their question and get them to where they want to be? And all of that depends on where the land falls.
How do they throw them on, Alex? So do they just like toss them or throw them up in the air, or what do they do?
However they would like to throw them. Usually I just have people kind of do it like dice, where they just kind of like throw the dice at the board. But if they would like to kind of toss it up in the air and have it land on the cloth, that's cool too. If they would like to kind of just throw it like dice and kind of toss them onto the cloth, that works. They're welcome to like rub them between their hands and like throw them onto the cloth. However they would like to throw them onto the cloth, they can throw them onto the cloth. You can also let them know while you are doing the reading that wherever they throw this rune, that is going to describe the situation that they are in and how they can handle that situation and how they can make it better and how they can turn it into a positive experience, because it's perfectly fine to throw the rune with intention. Obviously, they can't just like drop it into Muspelheim because they really want fire. No, but they can put the intention into the rune and know that wherever this rune lands, it is going to explain the situation they are in and how they can make that situation better.
Is there
Thank
an
you.
explanation on what each of these worlds are, to be able to express them to another person who's throwing the runes?
Yes, so that is based on the element that they correlate with. So Muspelheim is fire, Vanaheim is water, Niflheim is earth, and Jotunheim is air.
And the ones in the middle of the circle?
The ones in the middle of the circle are for the advanced class.
Okay.
So we are only going over these 4 today.
Okay, and also too, as I look at this, and I think it's backwards because the Earth is down at the south end instead of being at the top, and so
it's made like a compass. So
yeah,
south is fire, which is Muspelheim, and Niflheim is earth, which is at the bottom of the compass because it's north.
the north is at the top.
Well, okay, that's true. You are right. It definitely depends. You are correct. And it definitely depends. You have to put the runes cloth in the actual directions of it. So even though Muspelheim does equal fire and this, you're right, is set up in a sense that it is backwards, you would set the runes cloth. So south is in the south.
Okay, that sounds good.
North is in the north, yes.
Okay.
Thank you for pointing that out. You are.
It had me confused.
No, you are so right. After I said it in my head, I was like, no. You're right.
Yeah, north is at the top, and west is
Yep.
in the left, and the east is in the right, and the south is in the bottom.
South is at the bottom, typically. Yep. So you would take your runes cloth and put it so that Muspelheim is in the south and Niflheim is in the north. Thank you for pointing that out. I should probably flip the picture, actually, so that people understand, so that it is actually set up like a compass. Thank you. But the worlds over here, if you look to the actual like words on the right side, they represent the correct thing. So Muspelheim does represent fire, Vanaheim equals water, Niflheim equals earth, and Jotunheim equals air, and Muspelheim equals south, Vanaheim equals west, Niflheim equals north, and Jotunheim equals east. They are set up that way on the tree. So you just have to flip the runes cloth. I will flip the picture. Thank you. Yes. So, let's do. Oh yes, I totally have had that happen. That's a great question, actually. I totally have had somebody throw the rune, and instead of the rune showing up right side up or upside down, instead it's backwards. So it's not actually flipped on the side of the rune. What I actually do if that happens is I do have them throw it again. So what you want is you want the rune to show the correct side. So obviously you want the symbol of the rune to show. You also want to calculate whether or not it is upside down or it is right side up. That is very important as well. As we went over, the numerology and the definition of the rune changes whether it's right side up or upside down. So I know this part is a little confusing. Totally understand. So let's do an example. Let's take Fehu. Fehu is, for me at least, a very basic and easy rune, which is funny that it's the first one. It's almost like they made it to be a little bit simpler. But so let's say somebody got the Fehu rune and they threw the Fehu rune and it landed in Muspelheim and it landed in the south and it landed in fire. Yeah. So if it landed in the south and it landed in fire, I'm going to leave that up to you. This is our activity for the end of class, by the way. So now that you understand what fire means, if you don't understand what fire means, maybe pull up the website so that you can read what fire means. But just remember the key word for fire is action. Action, passion, determination, impulse. So if they got the Fehu rune and it landed in Muspelheim and it landed right side up, we're just going to pretend that all of these are right side up for now. What situation do you think that person is in? And how do you think that this rune can give guidance to help?
I kind of think it's they have to take action, and it's going to result in a wealthy situation.
Yes. Brilliant. Exactly. Yes.
They could be starting a new adventure. That could be something that is seeking counsel maybe for. But they actually have to have somebody there as a teacher to actually start this new adventure that could bring them that wealth that they're desiring to have.
Yes. Brilliant. Exactly. See? Brilliant. Yep. Exactly. Let's see what somebody wrote in chat. Yes, if they are blank-sided, then there is no meaning and you should probably re-roll. I am sure there are probably some readers out there that disagree and they think that maybe that means that I could see it meaning that you are lacking in that place in life that the rune would represent, or that a lot of that is missing from your life. I could see reading it blank. I personally don't. And I think that that would make it very complicated, but just fine. Complicated readings are totally fine. But I don't read that way, and I've never really actually heard of anyone else reading that way. And in any of the ancient texts that I have read from Norse people, they've never read that way. So I just assume pick up the rune and drop it on the rune's cloth again so that it shows the actual symbol of the rune. That's what
Wouldn't it also be is that it has to have a different meaning from the opposite of having it upright, like the reverse?
Yes. So if it shows up reverse or upside down, that's totally cool. Then you would just read it reverse, which is fine. Everybody does that, as you should. Okay, that's a lie. I'm sure not everybody does that. I am sure there are readers that refuse to read runes upside down in their reverse meanings. I am sure, because everybody practices their witchcraft differently. But in most readers that I have met, or even in the ancient texts that you can read from ancient Norse people who did these readings, they also read them in the reverse. The reverse is fine. So like if you had a reverse, like the Fehu rune showed up reversed in Muspelheim, it would mean something different. What she was asking is if it showed up flipped, like you couldn't even see the rune symbol, it was just blank, it was like the other side of the rock, then I would say just have them pick it up and re-roll.
Yeah, because it means like there's nothing there. There's nothing to read.
Yep, exactly. So let's do exactly that. So for our next activity, let's say instead the exact same rune, so the Fehu rune, you threw it and it fell in Muspelheim, but it was upside down. What would that mean? Remember that the rune is you and Muspelheim is the situation.
So it means that something you might have developed a new passion for isn't going to be a good idea, or like a good, it's not going to have a good outcome.
Totally. Yes, I could see that for sure. What else?
It could also mean that maybe that whatever you set yourself out to start, because of it being that wealth situation, that it's not going to be happening because that wealth might not be there to happen. That obstacle that is actually holding you back is not able to be completed because of that challenge that now is coming about because of that fire.
Yes, I love it. Totally.
It's kind of like go back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Totally. It could also represent too that it's just going to be extremely hard, that you will receive wealth from it, and it is worth doing, and there's going to be tons of actions and a lot of passion and dedication needed for this, and it's also going to be a really shitty experience, but that still leads to wealth. Right side up, even though it's still going to need that dedication and that passion and all of those actions required to really get anywhere with it. Usually if it's right side up, it's going to be dedication and passion and actions that you enjoy doing. It might be really hard, it might be really chaotic, it might be really upsetting and overwhelming, but you're probably going to also enjoy it. Whereas upside down, I could see it being something you don't enjoy, even though it's going to lead you to prosperity. Awesome. Does anybody have any questions?
How will we know that for the next class there is a mythology, Norse mythology number 4 now?
Yeah, so Norse mythology number 4 will be not next Sunday, because next Sunday we have a festival. Next Saturday and Sunday we have a festival. Let me check my calendar. So by the way, how you would know typically is just go to the main Divination page on Facebook and you will see a schedule. You'll see all of our events are listed there. I post them about a week. Sometimes I'm really ahead of myself and I post them 2 to 3 weeks in advance, but usually it's going to be a week. And I'll post them a week in advance or so, and you'll be able to see on there. Also, if you enroll in the Academy and you're actually like part of all of our Facebook groups and stuff, you'll be able to see like a month in advance, because we'll start talking about it. They're part of our discussions and everything. So if you do enroll in the Academy and you join the Facebook group, you will see when classes are pretty far in advance, because they get posted and discussed and talked about. But let me just tell you now. So class number 4 is going to be, today's the 31st. Our festival is on the 6th. It's on the 7th.
I thought the festival was on the 12th, Alex.
No, that's our retreat.
Okay.
The festival, the Bacchanal Festival, Blessed Bacchanal is on the 6th. And then we have the Blessed Bacchanal Bazaar on the 7th. And then we have our retreat on the 12th. And that's going to last until, so it looks like the class number 4 for this one is actually not going to be until the 20th or the 21st. So it'll probably be on the 21st.
And your class number 1 is on the website?
It is on the YouTube. It is actually also on the website. So if you go here, since we're already on the website, I will just show you. So if you go here, these are classes number 1 and 2.
Okay.
Yep, and those are already on the website, already posted. They are also on the YouTube. If you go to our YouTube, which is just Divination Academy on YouTube. But all the classes are also on the website. So if you would like to see the first 2 classes, they are right here on divinationacademy.com. And if you would like to get enrolled in the Academy, you would like to join us at all of our festivals, you would like to join us at our events and our book clubs and all of our classes and all the cool things that we do, please go to the main Facebook page, which once again, I will send everybody a link to that, and come join us.
And move to Colorado.
Yes, it is in Colorado, but
But it's amazing to join.
Yes, thank you. Anybody from any state or country is welcome to join. We have online activities that happen almost every single day now. It's great. And online clubs and online events and online rituals and everything. And it's all free. And we're not here to make money or to take money from you. We are just here to create a community and a really awesome academy. So here is the link to our Facebook page. Just shoot us a message and say, hey, I'd like to get enrolled.
But if you do want to PayPal Alex, she would be greatly appreciative.
Yeah, you know, I do pay for lots of stuff. So if you would like to send me money, if you'd like to donate, you are always welcome to donate to the Academy. There's a little button on the website that says how tuition works. And by the way, how tuition works is that there is no tuition, but you are welcome to do community service, volunteer work, or send some donations to my PayPal if you would like to. It's always optional. Oh, yay, I'm so glad you messaged us. Awesome. I can't wait to hear from you. I can't wait to get all of you enrolled, and I can't wait for our next class. I'm sorry that it's not going to be until the 20th. We have so much going on for summer. We're doing a foraging adventure where we go out into the mountains of Colorado and we forage for our own medicinal and spiritual herbs. And we're also doing a retreat where we go camp out on my coven's land for free, which is super fun. And we do a bunch of witchcraft in the middle of the woods. It's super great. So let me know if you're interested. Thank you so much for coming to class tonight.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank you for doing the class. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for being here. Yay. Awesome. I hope you guys have a wonderful night, and I will see you next time. Our next class, by the way, not like our Norse class. Our Norse class obviously isn't happening until the 20th, but we do have the next class with this academy is tomorrow at 2 p.m. and it's psychic sensitivity training, which is also super fun, and that professor is awesome. So if you'd like to come to another one, yes. If you'd like to come to another one, please sign up for that one. It's going to be great. It'll be in the exact same Zoom room tomorrow at 2 p.m.
Will I be able to watch a video of that after the fact?
Yes. Yep.
Perfect.
Awesome. I will see you guys next time.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
Bye.